carries weight, a heavy weight on their mind that carries on the rest of their body, seemingly dragging it closer to the earth with a slouched back and a hung head. For some, the weight isn't too much for them to handle. They can carry it with grace and manage it in a healthy way to be able to live their lives effectively. Others aren't so lucky, and that weight becomes a disease that destroys them from the inside out. That disease grows and grows until it becomes the unwilling companion known as depression. Some are genetically predispositioned for it. Others inadvertently find it through a difficult lifetime. No one can really understand how it's affecting you, even those who share your illness. Any attempt from others to help just increases its hold, as it makes you feel isolated and alone. The greater the depression gets, the more you isolate yourself. The more you isolate yourself, the more hopeless things tend to become, as everything that once brought joy slowly loses its meaning. Everyone that tries to help you seems to leave out of frustration one by one. It's at this moment of despair when the unthinkable becomes an increasingly tempting prospect. To end it. To finally lose yourself in the recesses of eternity. Suicide is an incredibly difficult subject to tackle in any capacity. It makes us uneasy, uncomfortable. We don't really know what to say or how to say it to someone to which that idea clouds their mind and judgment. We instinctively want to use the right words in the right sequence to convince them that suicide is not the answer, that there's always a better way. And people that ultimately try, or worse yet succeed, never actually want to do it. But they're lost. And to them it's the only way out. To them, it wouldn't matter if they went through with it or not. Nobody would care one way or the other. If we're lucky, we can reach them just in time and convince them that love and compassion can still be found. Sadly, that can be easier said than done. Comics are certainly no stranger with trying to address the issue of suicide, with characters like Superman, Mr. Fantastic, or even Deadpool all having their moments to prevent suicidal people from jumping. But it's very rarely explored beyond skin deep. The build-up is rarely given the attention it deserves, or the complete depression that often precedes it. Even rarer still is the superhero themselves facing their own battles with suicidal ideation. While we've seen plenty of superheroes saving people who have lost all hope in the world, it's not enough we see them as the ones that need saving. That is, until Magdalene Visaggio's Eternity Girl. I hope I said that right. Eternity Girl is a story published in 2018 from DC's Young Animal line, which was made to tell more wild and experimental stories about lesser-known or entirely new DC characters. As such, the book is very unusual in its presentation, filled with visually stunning yet bizarre imagery. The book also relies heavily on meta-narrative devices meant to discuss and dissect the nature of comic continuity, relaunches, and reimaginings. It's all very Grant Morrison-y, but a bit more comprehensible in my opinion. Yes, I said it, don't at me. With heavy use of unpredictable plot elements and metaphors to tell its story. And one thing I do want to address right off the bat is that there's also a larger transgender narrative at play in the story, but as I am a cis white male, I don't personally feel like I'm in a position where I can discuss the topic with the proper understanding and care that it deserves. While I do believe it is a topic worth exploring in great depth of positivity and praise, I lack the expertise to dissect it properly and would fear being disrespectful in any way to my transgender viewers, friends, or any members of the LGBTQ+ community. As such, it is not a topic we will go into directly today. But okay, that's all great. But what is the story actually about? Well, Eternity Girl is about a woman named Caroline Sharp. According to the book's prologue, she was a comic book character created in the 1950s as a member of the superhero team called Alpha 13. But after stopping a magical bomb created by the evil Madame Atom, a villain designed to mimic the atomic nature of the Cold War era, she became horribly misshapen and given control over every atom in her body. She became known as the Formless Girl, later to be renamed Chrysalis. From there, the book discusses various relaunches and reinterpretations, while also highlighting the rivalry between the Formless Girl and Madame Atom, each managing to kill the other on at least one occasion. While surprisingly convincing, the background here is entirely fabricated for the book, the purpose of which is to establish a relationship between Caroline and Madame Atom, but more importantly, makes the reader see Caroline as someone they should have noticed but didn't, to convince the reader that our main character has been invisible to us for decades. This further highlights her own feelings of being unloved, uncared for, and unseen by the time we move on to present day. And that's exactly what we see in the opening pages of the story, as Caroline is talking to her therapist about her suicidal ideation. The problem she runs into, though, is not that she's debating whether or not to go through with her plans, is that her abilities prevent her from actually dying. She tries jumping off a bridge once a month, but that never works. She tries cutting her own wrists, but she doesn't have any blood. She throws herself into traffic, tries to hang herself, all manner of methods, but her unique powers prevent any of them from actually working, making her essentially immortal. Outside of her powers, though, she really doesn't have a lot going on in her life. She's no longer engaged in superheroics after she had an incident with her team Alpha 13, and she's lashed out at her co-workers, who she dubbed the sympathy police, after they wouldn't stop pestering her about her condition. That condition being her increasing inability to fully control her powers, including her shape-shifting ability that allows her to blend in with the general public. Her only connection to the outside world is through her friend Danny, who seems determined to help Caroline be more active in her life and making sure she's taking care of herself. But this does little to lift her spirits so much as add to her belief that she needs to pretend to be human to make everyone around her happy. And when she's actually home alone, she does nothing except drink and dwell on the notion that she's not even technically a person, just a wave function, an intrinsic field interacting with other intrinsic fields. It's during one of these late-night lamentations, however, that she is greeted by the seemingly undead Madame Adam, who tells Caroline everything she wants to hear, that she's pointless, that she should be dead, that her very existence is doing little more than killing time. Not only does she reinforce everything Caroline believes about herself, but this ghoulish figure also offers her a solution. Destroy all of time and space, and you can finally die. Desperate to end her suffering and not thinking of the effects on others, she agrees. From there, the story splits into two different but seemingly concurrent paths. One with Caroline in the real world, dealing with her depression as everyone around her deals with her increasingly self-destructive behavior, and another in what is called high space, a realm that is described as the backstage of the universe. In the high space, she is with Madame Adam on a quest to destroy a strange obelisk called the Shining Tower, which Madame Adam claims controls the cycle of life, death, and rebirth responsible for the many different versions of Caroline across all dimensions. To destroy the tower means to destroy all of existence. The two paths seem to reflect each other, as the events in high space seem to actively portray Caroline's state of mind in the real world. When she's attacking a giant guardian in high space, she's also confronting her old boss about how he treated her, and when she loses control during that confrontation, it's also the same time she lashes out and destroys the guardian. This reflection happens throughout the book from this point forward. The closer she gets to the Shining Tower in high space, the more self-destructive she becomes in the real world, to the point where she becomes a massive danger to everyone around her. There's even a point where she attempts suicide in front of Danny by literally causing herself to explode in a massive nuclear blast. But hope does finally arrive for Caroline in both worlds, with the arrival of her old friend from Alpha 13, Rick. In the real world, Rick successfully stops her from exploding, while in the high space, she is intercepted by a mysterious figure named Crash, the physical embodiment of order and universal cycles. While both are there to try to help Caroline, they choose very different approaches. Rick chooses to listen as Caroline regales him with her frustrations with the mistake that is her life, and how the same cycle seems to repeat over and over and over again. Crash tries to talk to her, explaining that while she is, by definition, a universal mistake, everyone else is meaningless too, at least in universal context. But that doesn't mean that nothing matters. In his words, it only matters if it matters to you, and everything and everyone means something to someone. Both Rick and Crash have some success in trying to reach out to Caroline, but in both cases, there's an interloper that causes things to end violently. In Rick's case, it's a signal he activates when he fears she's losing control. In high space, it's Madame Adam telling her that the only fate she has to look forward to is misery and loneliness, and that she's the only one who can help her end it once and for all. So when all other methods fail, the people at Alpha 13 try to restrain her against her will. This too ends violently and convinces Caroline to give herself completely into the high space to finally end her suffering. She cuts herself off from any possible positive influence and sets herself up to finish her plan. But there's one unexpected hope that slips into Caroline's high space: her friend Danny, who chooses to chase after her in her darkest moment. And as Danny does so, she's immediately put in parallel with all other possible versions of her, an image that continues until she reaches Caroline at the tower. And it's there that Danny finally reaches through both literally and figuratively with two concepts: the ability to understand and the idea of choice. When you break down who Caroline was as a person, She was someone who fought like hell to be the best. For a while she was, but that was taken from her by her transformation. It was taken from her when she lost control of what she could do. It was taken away from her when she lost her job due to conditions no one could understand. This caused her to sink deeper, believing that her meaning and value were taken too. While not on the same scale, Dani too had to let go of her own dreams, the version of herself that she wanted to be. She wanted to be a fighter pilot and fought like hell to become one. But life, as it often does, got in the way and destroyed that dream. But that wasn't the end. Because it taught her an important lesson, that we're all capable of choosing, reinventing, and rebooting our lives into something completely new, something that is uniquely us. There's no one single point to a person's life. You make it. Or as Dani puts it, nobody gives you a purpose but you. You don't need to end the world to make yourself a new one. And that's enough. The ability to choose. It's enough to realize you have more freedom than you know. And it's the reminder that Carolyn needed. As she literally and metaphorically completely reinvents herself, her look, her personality, and her purpose. She chooses to recreate it all in order to feel like she's finally has a place again. Like she's finally who she truly is. And as she joins the high space completely to undo the damage she caused, she finally finds a way to stop destroying her old life and start creating a new one. What we've witnessed through Caroline's story is a struggle to survive when your brain is actively trying to convince you not to. When your mind has become your own worst enemy, it's a constant battle not to let it have full control. In this case, her worst enemy takes the form of Madame Adam, who consistently seeks to tear Carolyn down and twist any positive or hopeful thought into something that fits her agenda. She positions herself as Carolyn's ally and only confidant, and tries to alienate and isolate her from any other peer she has. Crash, on the other hand, represents a voice of compassion and the will to live that wants Caroline to believe that life is worth living. Interestingly, Crash is a piece of herself that she wasn't even aware of until she started to actively plan her own demise. He tries to convince her that life is meaningless until we give it meaning. That everything only has the importance we give it, and that's worth holding on to. Unfortunately, Caroline is far more familiar with the demon in her head than the angel, and she rejects his argument outright. Nothing in her own mind, in her own high space, is enough to convince her that she shouldn't destroy her world. She becomes so encapsulated in this torturous and constantly shifting landscape, this realm in which her very existence seems a mockery, that she can't see any other way out, nor does she want to. That is, of course, until someone from outside finds her way in. It takes someone that cares to the extent that they will go to extreme lengths to understand her pain, quite literally in this case, to not only get her to see anything from the world outside the imaginary one she's created, but also to listen. And once Caroline is actually listening, her one true friend introduces a new idea, something she hasn't considered before: the ability to change. Now, none of us have immortality powers or have the ability to travel through time and space, but many of us do understand what depression can do to your heart and mind, how it can strip you of everything that gave your life meaning and purpose. When we believe nobody cares and that even the ones that do are merely pretending, when we believe that those who say we matter to them secretly find our depression a burden at best and annoyance or inconvenience at worst, then it becomes all the easier to believe we are alone. And that is how we are destined to remain. And that's what I think gives Eternity Girl such weight. It genuinely seems to understand how chaotic that depression and suicide ideation can feel like, and found a unique way to portray that feeling in a way that's emotionally resonant and uses complex language and ideology to convey a simple truth. There's no single purpose for your life. There's no divine plan. The world doesn't decide anything for you. No one chooses what to do with your life except for you, and change is always an option. Rebirth is always an option, especially when it feels like it isn't. Change is possible. It's within your grasp, but you need to focus away from the demons long enough to reach it. You can change your world. You can change yourself. It won't be easy, it won't be pretty, but it can be done. The demons that depression brings out in us will always try to convince you that you can't, that who you are is rigid and set in stone, that the miserable life you lead will remain so because you have no power to do a damn thing about it. But that is a lie. And that demon isn't you. And it is not your friend. Although it will try very hard to convince you that it is. You have real friends that will be a much better guide than the Madam Adams could ever be. Because they actually care about you, whether you want to believe it or not. And if you want to change, if you want to get better, if you want to be the person you know you can change yourself to be, the person you know you are, then you need to be able to let them in. Because suicidal thoughts are dark and complicated and convincing. And that is not a burden you need to carry on your own. Even if you don't have someone nearby that can help you, there's someone out there that's willing to listen, and plenty of places to call or write that will allow you to speak and be heard. And I know this because I've been there too. I've used the suicide call hotline about 4 times now, I think. I have my own Madam Adams, as it were, and there have been times when it got overwhelming, and it was hard to get out of it. I remember driving home some days late at night after a particularly rough time back when I was in college, and I would take my seatbelt off, just in case an accident occurred and just happened to make the choice for me. Times when I've held broken glass in my hand and thought for just a split second how easy it would be if I were just cut in the right place. I don't think I was ever really serious about my intentions, and I've never really made a plan, but I remember the temptation and spontaneity of it. And it's disturbing how easy it is to be convinced that you don't matter and that nobody cares. I'm extremely fortunate that I do have a lot of people in my life that have helped me through a lot of my darkest moments. But when even they weren't available, or it was something I just couldn't talk about for whatever reason, I used the hotline, and it probably saved my life. Even when it wasn't serious, they still listened. And it was enough to help me get back on my feet long enough to know that I needed to change, that I wanted to change. And so I did. I worked hard. I studied myself. Not in a negative way, but as a constructor looking for ways to rebuild the foundation. I'm still working on it. I'm still studying myself. Therapy helps a lot with that, if you can afford that. Some days are harder than others, and there are plenty of times when that darkness comes back, but I keep working, believing that it will one day lead me where I want to be. And maybe that's how we have to view ourselves during these dark times. Not as critics pointing out all the flaws in the architecture, but as an artist who sees the beauty in what exists and sees the potential to make it something more. What can't be repaired or replaced, you can find ways to make useful or beautiful in its own right. You can reshape your world, your mind, and your body in ways that are extraordinary, and you can do so without sacrificing all that you are. Because there's beauty there that you have to fully appreciate. The ability to reinvent yourselves, to reimagine who we are, and start the journey to be exactly that is one of our greatest gifts. The ability to find what makes us special and nurture its growth as well keep us surviving not just the world at large, but our inner world as well. And if we can do that, we'll eventually do more than just survive. You will thrive and flourish for the rest of eternity.